Let's inquire and examine the text under the theme, God will take care of you. God will take care of you. I'm a follower of Reverend Dr. Kamal Hassan, the late spiritual giant, a mystic and a social activist, who was a pastor to many of the leaders of the civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s. They came to Dr. Thurman for spiritual counseling, relational deepening with God, and guidance on how best to live their lives as leaders of a people's movement for justice. From Dr. Thurman, I heard a story of his childhood. He talked about a time when he was a young child and there was a occurrence in the heavens. Halley's Comet, they call it. And people learned that Halley's Comet was going to be coming and passing by very close to the Earth at a particular point in Dr. Thurman's childhood. And this caused a great deal of fear and consternation among people across the United States, because it was believed that if Halley's Comet came too close to Earth or even crashed on the Earth, that a terrible disaster was going to happen. Dr. Thurman remembers all of the worried predictions that were being made in the newspapers and among people who were having conversations about the coming of Halley's Comet. And even people in the church were very worried about what would happen when Halley's Comet came either too close to the Earth or crashed on the Earth. As a young child, seeing all of this fear in adults, Dr. Thurman began to be scared himself. He remembers at one point speaking to his mother about his fear. And he said, Mother, what's going to happen? The Halley's Comet is going to come, and all around me I'm hearing people say that something catastrophic is going to happen when the Halley's Comet either comes too near to us or crashes on the planet Earth. What are we going to do? Dr. Thurman says in the story his mother looked lovingly at him and said, we are going to win. God will take care of us. God will take care of us. And as we know, Halley's Comet came and went. There was no earthly catastrophe because of Halley's Comet. And all those who were predicting doom and the end of things as we know it were wrong. And in that experience, Dr. Thurman says he learned an important lesson about faith in God. That though there are times when it appears catastrophe looms on the horizon, though there are times when those about us and even we ourselves become deathly afraid and so sure of what will happen that will disrupt our lives forevermore, we should always remember that God will take care of us. I offer that today for those of us who are frightened about what the results of the election may be. Those of us who may be affected by all of the predictions of disaster and doom that the Republican Party and Project 2025 will visit upon us. All of us that are so sure that this will be the end of things as we know it if this result happens that way. Hear me, like Dr. Thurman heard his mother, God will take care of us. You didn't hear me say nothing bad will happen. You didn't say that. You didn't hear me say that there will not be danger. And there will not be harm. What you heard me say is God will take care of us. I think the writer of 1 Kings, in telling this story, is trying to communicate a similar message. We find here a story of Elijah the prophet. At a time in their people's history where there was drought and famine. The regular rhythm of rain and soaking the earth and helping to grow the crops that people would consume as their food was interrupted. Something had happened and the rain had not fallen in its normal, natural time. It said it got so bad that there wasn't even dew on the ground in the mornings. People were going hungry. There were no crops. People were suffering. And Elijah the prophet was told by God, I'm going to tell you where you can go to find sustenance. And I will make sure that you receive something to nourish your body and to strengthen you and to keep your life. And because Elijah listened to God and went where God told Elijah to go, uprooted himself from where he had been living and went to beside and relocated to the side of the creek. He found water and he was fed by the ravens that brought him food in the morning and in the evening. And it is in that place of lack, of knowing that you cannot provide for yourself what you need, and you must lean on God to take care of you. Elijah had the experience of seeing God's salvation. God had taken care of Elijah, even in ways that were unusual. Here's a really important point. Elijah's experience was not just for Elijah. God was preparing Elijah through the struggle that Elijah had lived through his seeing the power of God's deliverance. Now Elijah has a testimony that he can share with someone else who is struggling. What God did for me, God can do for you. Don't be confused, beloved. When you are blessed by God, the whole reason for that is that you can go and be a blessing. What God does for you is not just for you. It is so that you can share that experience with somebody else who then may, from your testimony, your experience of deliverance, receive deliverance themselves. Blessed to be a blessing. God will take care of you, but it's also so that you can take care of somebody else. The experience of challenge and difficulty and even crisis that we have can be our teachers if we allow them to be. If we don't get caught up in asking, well, why did this happen anyway? I thought God loved me. I thought God was powerful. I thought God was good. Doesn't that mean something bad shouldn't happen at all? God has not promised anyone a rose garden. This idea that believing in God and becoming Christian or having a relationship with the divine will protect you for the rest of your days and you'll never have worry or pain or trouble or sickness or death. I don't know where that came from. But it sure didn't come from the Bible. Because the biblical characters struggle with everything all other humans struggle with. Because life be lifing. And struggle is just as natural in human life as joy. They're parts of the same experience. And if we are present in struggle, there's a way to use it to our own benefit, to our own deepening of our relationship with ourselves and with God. Because Elijah couldn't save himself, he learned something about God that he did not know, which he would never have known if things had not gotten that difficult, where he knew that his salvation depended on God's intervention. And so Elijah, carrying this experience of deliverance, goes to Zarephath. God directs him there. Notice, when God says go, Elijah goes. Go live by the creek. Elijah goes. Go to Zarephath, which is not the city of the people of Israel. These are strangers. These are folk different from your folk. These are not your kin. Go there. And Elijah goes. because he follows God's direction. How well do we follow God's direction when it encourages us to do something we don't normally do? When it sends us among people who are not necessarily our tribe, who are different from ourselves, for an opportunity to share our testimony. Sandra Trammell told me once, you can't testify unless you've been tested. You don't have nothing to say unless God has come to your rescue in a place where you were not sure that you were going to make it. You got to be tested to testify. So Elijah was tested by the creek. God provided for him, but then after a while, even that dried up. And he followed God's direction and went to Zarephath, where he encountered a widow, a vulnerable woman. Widows in that culture, in that time, lived very precarious lives. With no man to speak for them, no man to protect them, no man to provide for them, no man to defend them. They were at an extreme disadvantage in society. Here she was with the last few ounces of flour to her name, the last few drops of olive oil to her name. She didn't even have firewood. She was combing the streets looking for sticks in order to build a fire, to cook the last meal that she and her son would ever have. Here, God sends the prophet to the poorest of the poor. Here, God sends the prophet to the vulnerable who have no advocate. Here, God sends the prophet to the single mother who can no longer provide for her child. He says to Elijah, find her. And there's a certain beauty in this example of mothering. This woman who has little to nothing, with what she believes is her last act, is an act of care for her child. With the last drop of oil and the last ounce of flour and the last breath in her body, she's going to do something to feed her baby. She knows not this God of Israel or any of that thing. She's not a believer. She's some other ethnicity with a different spiritual cosmos. But God cares for all of God's creation and sends the prophet Elijah not to the people of Israel, but to the people of Zarephath. And he says, let me have a good thing. And in hospitality, the woman obliges. Elijah asks for her to cook for him. And she says, I would if I could. was the last of what I have. It's going to be my son-in-law's last Sunday. And Elijah assures him, if you will follow my instructions, your family will not enough, and your boy will not enough, and you will have what is needed to sustain your life. God will take care of you. Elijah's testimony. He had seen God care for him when he had nothing to care for himself. He had seen God's salvation. Didn't have to wait to die and see it in heaven. He saw it as he lived in the land of the living. And because Elijah was tested and he had seen the power of God's deliverance, he could testify to this woman of Zarephath who believed that the end was near. Through Elijah's testimony and the mothering instincts of this woman, many in that town were fed. Because God will take care of you. For those of us who look at the future with fear, for those of us who believe that disaster is one vote away, for those who don't understand that the experiences of struggle, the experiences of suffering can be formative experiences where we discover something about ourselves, that there's a certain deepness to us, that there's a certain ability to surprise ourselves with how we can keep it on, even if we aren't sure how it's all going to turn out. You learn that in experiences of difficulty, of leaning in ways you never had to lean in before, because you wouldn't have tried so hard if it wasn't so difficult. And then the experience of struggle and difficulty and testing becomes formative, and we learn something about God we didn't know. And in unexpected ways, even through strangers or people unlike us, God will take care of us. And the Haley's promise, right? When the Project 2025 started, when there is famine and drought, when our resources get low, it's important to remember God will take care of that. Whichever side is victorious, the church will still have critical work to do for those who are vulnerable, for those without resources, for single mothers trying to make a way with their children, from strangers who come to us from other countries, for those who are incarcerated by the hundreds of thousands among our people, for those living on streets and under bridges. There will be work for the church to do, for the people of Palestine and Sudan, for the people of Haiti and Congo. There will be work for the church to do. Because those who have been tested will need to testify that God will take care of you. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Beloved, we offer this message to those who believe their lives will be enhanced by God's care. We say that God will take care of you. One of the ways that God does that is through baptism in the name of Jesus Christ. That the water we sprinkle on you as Presbyterians, we can submerge you, it's up to you. But either way, it's an outward sign of an inward change that begins to make you a new creature, a new story, a new testimony, and a new song. If you've been baptized, but at this moment you're not a regular member of a congregation, then you're almost there. In our denomination, we believe faith means faith in community, faith with other people, walking with other people, studying with other people, serving with other people, developing this relationship with God, with other people, because none of this can be done by ourselves. The woman in Zarephath needed an Elijah. The other hungry people in Zarephath needed her. And all of us need each other, so we invite you to join this worship community called Sojourner Truth Presbyterian Church, which is small enough to know you, but large enough to serve you and serve the world with you. This sounds like something you want to know more about. I invite you to be in touch with you. Kamal Hassan. Text or call me at 510-691-5204, 510-691-5208. Or you can email teachelder@gmail.com. teachelder@gmail.com. Let's have a conversation about how God will take care of you. God bless you.